Hey guys, what's up? This is Dale Dortch here. I have decided to start making some videos because of getting in arguments with people and stuff like that, calling me a conspiracy theorist and all that good stuff. And everybody knows I'm a patriot. I've got kids in the military and all that good stuff. And I see our country going down a road that's non-repairable. It's like when it hits, everyone's going to be flabbergasted and not know what's going on. So what I'm going to do is, my goal is to break the financial matrix. What that is, it's a system of control that a handful of people have over the rest of us and the world. And I'm going to go through here, and call out, like Bob Schuhoff, right here's your proof. I'm about to give it to you, that the Federal Reserve, there's nothing federal about it, and there's no reserves in it. It's a private banking cartel, and you can look up the bill. It's HR 7837 in the 63rd Congress. Now, I looked this bill up and I read it myself. It's crazy how they force banks into the Federal Reserve, or else they will be non-existent, and how the government has raises our taxes and that stuff. But I'm going to go through all this first. And I just got notes, so you guys just have to bear with me. If you want, take notes. We all know that money is something that people agree on as being money in the first place. Like in biblical times, a lot of people, mostly Christians, we believe that God put gold here as a form of currency for us. Gold and silver. There was other things before that was used, sheep and wampum and all that stuff. But gold has basically been the currency for the world, since the world's been here. And so I'm going to go on through here. I'm going to start with Genghis Khan. He was the first person to have a fiat money system. What he would say was, he would pull up, to a farm here, and he would ask the people, he was like, hey, won't you sell me your horses? They would say, no, I don't want to sell my horses. So he'd chop their head off. But the guy that lived over here, he would come running up to Mr. Genghis, and he would say, look, man, I got horses for sale. Because the other people, I'm sorry, I went a little too fast. The reason they didn't want to sell their horses is because he had printed money with his picture on it. And he said, this is money or else I'm going to kill you. So he'd kill them when they say no. That's what our Federal Reserve has done to us. Anyway, so the guy next door, he's willingly going up, basically putting handcuffs on, or whatever you want to say, the shackles, and say, yes, I'll be your slave. I'll sell you your horses for your fake money, for your paper money. That was Genghis Khan. Marco Polo, even when he came back from Asia, talked about this Khan and what was going on. John Law in 1715 to 1720, he brought the first fiat money system to France. He talked to the people in France to printing this money, and they can pass it out as many times as they want. That's called fractional reserve banking. When you say you have $1,000 in the bank, but the bank, they turn around and loan that $1,000 out 10 times. However, if you go to cash a check for $1,000, they're making you fill out all kinds of paperwork. If you ask for too much money, it's not there. If we did that, we would be in jail or prison. Just the way it is. So John Law, he found a new land called Mississippi. And so he started selling these shares from Mississippi. And it was just like us in the Roaring '20s. Their stock market rose and all that good stuff. Well, it was a big bubble and it popped, bam, it was gone. He ran out of town with his tail between his legs. In 1798, the Rothschilds started the central banking system in Europe. So people that say, if you talk about the Rothschilds or the elite, they say that you're crazy or look at you like you're stupid, when all this stuff is, in all actuality, very, very true. And so as we go on here, the Founding Fathers wrote in the Constitution that Congress can coin money. It doesn't say anywhere about printing money. As a matter of fact, it was gold and gold reserves, which makes it stable money because it is what it is. the government can't mess with it, or you can't have a private company messing with it, you know. Bear with me here. And then they first found out, like, in the United States, the reason the Founding Fathers even put that in there to begin with, because the war was expensive, the Revolutionary War. And so they needed money, so they printed up the Continental Dollar. Well, it got to be so bad, they even made jokes and say it's not even worth a Continental. That was a saying that they used to have back then. And by the way, I'm going to put a couple links on the bottom of this video, so you guys, if you want to, you can go look it up. Otherwise, feel free to look it up yourself, you know, for what I don't have there. The Civil War, they started printing more money again because wars are expensive. Lincoln's trying to hold the country together. And they even started the income tax back in the Civil War, but it was deemed unconstitutional, like it a total of 2 times. The progressive payroll tax was deemed unconstitutional. So it was wiped out, but the IRS lived on. They kept the IRS around. And then in the Panic of 1907, which from what I've read, most believe that it was the bankers like J.P. Morgan was in this. They sent people to go get money, which was a very small percentage of people. Nothing like they portray on TV or the news, you know. So they couldn't get the money. It was a panic. And so, you know, the American people wanted the government to do something. And of course, they did something. Senator Aldrich and Vreeland started the Vreeland Act. And what it was is some billionaires met on an island in 1910 called Jekyll Island. And that's where they contrived this Federal Reserve. It's a secret banking cartel, central bank, like we had when we started. It ran out during the term of James Madison, but when he started the War of 1812, he needed money and he got it going again. While Andrew Jackson in the 1830s had a huge campaign, you know, he fought against it big time, so he put a stop to it. Okay, so the country already knew what a central banking system was. They didn't want a central banking system. That was just like back in the day in Europe, if you had gold, when you dealt with gold, you would go to a goldsmith. He would hold your gold, and then he figured out that he can just give you slips of paper and take it to town and spend it at where you wanted, like, you know, the hotel or the guy that held your horse or whatever. You can pay him with the slips of money, then that guy could go redeem your gold. Well, the goldsmith started handing out more and more slips than there was gold. So our founding fathers knew all this stuff. They've already lived it before. You know, they were very well educated. So Aldrich, and then they got together and, hold on here, twice was shut down. And then in 1913, the Owen Glass Act was passed. We had a third central bank in all but its name. They knew they couldn't name it a central bank because they knew that we wouldn't go for it. And at the same time, in 1917 or 1913, they passed the progressive payroll tax. And I'm going to explain this. They also passed the 17th Amendment. Okay, now what happens with the 17th Amendment? Our state legislatures used to vote or elect our U.S. senator to go represent us in Congress to Washington, to get us stuff, to bring stuff back home. They were concerned about our state. Then we had the People's House that the people voted in. So what happened in 1913 when they passed the 17th Amendment? So now the U.S. senators were no longer elected by our state government that we elect. Instead, they were elected by the populace, which means campaign funds, which means we lose our state sovereignty, which means they can pass the Owen Glass Act without a problem. They pass the progressive payroll tax and totally threw our sovereignty out the window. It's just like mob, man. They just put it up to mob rule. Mobs aren't good. You guys all know that. There is here that I read, there's a book too you guys can look up. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. But there was a congressman that was laughed at when they passed this, and he said that, he said that the interest could get up to 20% for the progressive payroll tax. It started out at 3%. Actually, it was 2.5%, but then there was another 0.5% added on. And they left him out of Congress, saying that it would never get to 20%. That's kind of funny if you ask me. And that was pretty much like Chris Brady says, that was the death of a republic and the birth of an empire. That's just like now you hear politicians and news people say we're spreading democracy and freedom around the world. It's not democracy. Matter of fact, if democracy is nowhere in the Constitution, we are a republic. We're a democracy now, but we were founded as a republic. And as a matter of fact, I think it was James Madison that said the only thing worse than a democracy is the violence of its death. So I'm just telling you, we've got a big bubble coming. If we don't stand up and do something, we're going to be in big trouble. In World War I, they had to print more money because Roosevelt took us in the war, even though his campaign slogan was he kept us out of the war. And so he got elected a second time, took us into World War I. And then they had the recession in the 1920s to 21. We had the roaring 20s because they started just printing money like crazy to get out. Because what happened was the guys that were at war, they came home, there were no jobs, so they got it going by printing money. Which when they print money, the only thing they do is the U.S. government sells bonds to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve prints the money. Now it's just a push of a button. They don't even do any more of that. It's retarded. And so then they tax us with the progressive payroll tax to pay for it, to pay the big bankers, that want their interest for the Federal Reserve. And you can read all of that in the bill. It talks about how there's 12 districts, how the banks had to do it. They had a 60-day notice to accept the Fed, that they were going into the Federal Reserve, a private cartel, or else they were no longer allowed to do business. It's a scam. In 1932, they passed the Smoot Hawley Act. Now, what that did is because they were trying to raise tariffs and stuff like that, and that's the reason in 1920-21 that there was a big scare, because just the economists, well, actually it says on my notes here, 1,000 economists signed the petition to stop it, and the rumor caused a crash. The funny thing is the stock market was back up to where it was 1 year later. But instead, when they put in all the tariff wars, we had a tariff war like all around the world. That's what the Depression was. And there actually wasn't like thousands of people jumping off buildings to their deaths. It's just stuff, it's just ridiculous how our government and our media lies, because you do know the media is owned by what we call the financial matrix. These bankers that control everything in the whole world. They control everything. As a matter of fact, there's only like 6 maybe, I'd have to look it up, but I've read it somewhere, 6 corporations that essentially own all corporations in America. And actually the Federal Reserve is a corporation. It says it in the bill, which means it has rights and corporation rights and all that stuff. In 1934, they passed the Wagner Act. They also passed Fannie Mae. Oh, and they also said that the Federal Reserve, the Gold Reserve Act, made it illegal to own gold until the 1970s. Unless you had teeth fillings or jewelry, it was illegal to own gold. That's crazy. 40 years illegal. However, other governments, like foreign governments, can come and redeem their dollars in gold. They're the only ones that can. We weren't allowed to. And then in 1935 started Social Security. Biggest Ponzi scheme on the planet. A Ponzi scheme was actually named after a guy named Ponzi that would go and get $10 from you, and then he'd turn and get $10 from the next person. He'd tell you, he's like, I'll be back with your return. And he gets $10 from everybody. When he gets back to you, he offers you the $10 plus 10 and say, well, I got $20. I doubled your money. So what do you say? Oh, let me double it up. I'll just throw in all my money then. And he eventually got caught and went to prison. The first person to ever receive Social Security, a payout, was Ida Hunt. You can look this up. She paid in $22.25, lived to be over 80, and pulled over $20,000 out of it. That's our Social Security program. It was a Ponzi scheme. It never was insurance. That's what they claimed it to be. They also passed the Unemployment Act with nothing to like protect it, because you pay into it, but so they just print more money if they need it. Huh. Going on here. 1944, after World War II, they had the Bretton Woods Agreement. That's when the IMF was founded, the U.S. reserve currency of the world. So everyone talks about in the Bible, it was like, well, we're going to get a one world government or one world currency, and it's going to be the end. Well, we already have a one world currency, folks. It's right. It's right. You can look it up. You know what I mean? And what this did was, so when we would hit hard times, see, they would print money. Okay, inflation means you print a lot of money compared to the goods that you have out there. So if I have a goods selling TVs and there's a lot of money out in the marketplace because they keep printing it, then that causes inflation, the price of it to go up. Deflation is when the government stops printing money, interest rates go up, and prices of everything fall. But see, they don't want to do that because they want to keep us enslaved. They wanted to have us in credit. And I got some numbers here too on credit. You know, it's retarded. If every American paid $1 every hour of every day toward our debt, it would take us 35,000 years to pay it off. It's retarded. As a matter of fact, oh, here we go. I got more here. Huh. The Guns and Butter program started. Kennedy space race, cost money, print more money. The Johnson Great Society, print more money. The Vietnam War, wars are expensive, print more money. And I would say that is because Vietnam was not in the world banking system yet, so we went in and made them. Just like we did Iraq with Saddam Hussein, just like we did in Libya, just like we're trying to do in Syria, just like they're trying to get us to do in Iran, North Korea, and Russia. That's the 4 countries that are not in the IMF yet. The only countries in the world. Actually, there was a country the other day that actually backed out of it, that got out of it somehow. I don't know how they let them out. Maybe they're not too small and not worried about them. But that's the 4 countries that's not in the financial matrix. That's why we're fighting with them. All right. They also came out with Medicare and Medicaid. And since hold on here, I'm looking. Okay, I guess I can't find my note though. But anyway, since the housing mortgage thing worked so good, they started the Freddie Mac. So they had 2 of them. Nixon starts printing more money. The Arabian oil producers decide not to sell us any oil because, look, you're giving us all this dollar and it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Bam, and they quit selling us oil. We ended up getting it though through Russia and different other places. I'm trying to go on here. ERISA, 1974, 401k. The 401k, it's another scam. Actually, my cousin, he, in 2008, he had $110,000 in his 401k. Overnight, he lost it all. Gone. He no longer retired. This happened before in the Vietnam Republic. You can look that up. Right now, we are $20 trillion in debt. Our U.S. government is. $67 trillion total U.S. debt. That's $207,000 per citizen and $813,000 per family. This is from the actual government website, U.S. Department of Treasury. You can look it up. Total personal debt, $18 trillion. Small business, $11 trillion. I went over my time there. Hold on. All right. I'm going to wrap it up here. Social Security, small business, $11 trillion. Social Security, $16 trillion. Medicare, $27 trillion. 107 unfunded 107 trillion unfunded liabilities. That's crazy. In 1913, everybody wants to talk about, I'm going to throw this in real quick. 1913, when all this crap was passed, both houses were ran by Democrats. Carter Glass of Virginia for the House, Robert Owen of Oklahoma for the Senate. They created 12 Federal Reserve banks that would act as a central bank for all other banks. The banks would not be federal, but privately owned by member banks. This is in the bill, guys. You guys keep telling me that this crap hasn't happened, and you don't want to open your eyes to the realization that our government is evil. And you sit there and you argue with me and you call me crazy and all this other crap, and I hear all your complaining on Facebook, but then you don't want to do anything about it and you fail to open your eyes and see the truth. It really just blows me away. You know? And then you act like you're so smart and you know everything. It's funny. Read some books. The Federal Reserve note is a subscription. So banks have to pay a subscription to the Federal Reserve. Do you see what I'm saying? They're forced to do this. And that's all I got. All I got to say is, you know, I'm going to start finding out some more truths and posting it for you guys, because I do quite a bit of reading, like things that about the Democratic Party that you couldn't believe. You know, let's see here. Lincoln was the first, and I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I just want to set the record straight for the truths out there. Lincoln was the first Republican. Democrats started all this in 1913. What else? Oh, Democrats had a filibuster to stop women's suffrage, women's right to vote. Tried to stop it in 1918 or 19. What else? Oh, Democrats stood on the floor and had the longest filibuster in history to stop the Civil Rights Bill. Martin Luther King was a Republican. Shall I go on and on? Andrew Jackson started the Democratic Party. Oh, the Democrats also started the KKK. You know, the Democrats also run all the inner cities in our country. They keep everybody down and, oh, vote for me and I'm going to give you some free stuff. Well, the free stuff's not going to happen anymore. Just like in Illinois, they raised a stinking soda tax up, but if you have food stamps, you don't have to pay it. But hard-working people have to pay that tax, even for fountain. That's ridiculous. You guys need to wake up. If you have any questions or a subject, I'd like to go over it. You know, go over it some more. But look that up. I encourage you guys. I encourage you guys to strongly wake up. And, you know, I had an argument with someone earlier about Trump and, you know, voting for the lesser of two evils. And come to find out, you know, I didn't even vote, but I do support Trump. Trump is the only person that recognizes the Federal Reserve. But if he was going to come out and say that, they would do to him like they did Kennedy and put a bullet in his head. You can look at Kennedy talked about it 2 weeks before he was killed. It's just the truth, you know. So whether you guys want to believe all the stuff on TV or not, you know, I could prove that the CIA, you know, started the TV and used it for propaganda. I could prove that the corporations own all this stuff. I could prove that we're stuck in a financial matrix and we're slaves. We think we deserve everything when we don't deserve crap. How can we expect our government to stay out of debt when we can't even run our own houses and stay out of debt? You know, I just don't understand it. So, you know, I've wanted to back off for a while and hope that it would run its course. But, you know, the course that it's running, I can't stand by and let it go anymore. I got to stand up. You know, I just want you guys to stand up with me to at least do some reading, you know, and learn about it. Get your family out of debt. This big bubble that happened in France and that's happened in the Weimar Republic, Rome, you can look it all up. It's happening now. The one thing about Trump, I know he's probably saying it just to keep our morale up, but the stock market is shooting way high. The bubble is growing. And I said it a few years ago that it'd be July of 2017. You know, and it's ironic that the IMF came out after that and said it, but you can look on their website, you know, they're saying it. So I don't think it's over. I think we've had a big bubble waiting for a pin to pop it with. And they're doing all this lying, and, you know, man, if they do the right things, it could be over for us. I watched a guy last night from the CIA that said he gives it 5 years. So, but we can turn it around if we wake up. We got to start standing up against our government. You know, look at Illinois. It's bad. Wait till that hits the whole country. But enough of my ranting and raving. I really appreciate you guys and love you guys, man. That's the only reason I'm doing this. And, you know, it takes away from other things that I'm doing, but it's what I'm passionate about because I deeply care, you know, about my country. My son's in the Marine Corps, aircraft mechanic. They took his job away so he could go over to Bahrain and work security. All for the financial matrix. All for people that don't give a crap about us. They're doing it for money, to keep us enslaved. You know, just like back in the slavery days, you weren't allowed to read books. If I gave a slave a book, they would hang me. Today they didn't have to do it. We just kneel down and say, yes, master, and go get on Facebook. Or we go watch some stupid TV shows that don't even matter. We don't read our Bibles anymore. You know, matter of fact, if I say I'm a Christian, I get looked at like I'm crazy. Because people don't understand and they've twisted it all around. So if you want to get on that subject, I can get on it too, because I know what it says in the Constitution about the freedom of religion. You know, all that good stuff. So, man, help me join in this fight and share my page, guys. And I appreciate you. And if you want to, come up with a subject for me. Thank you. Good night.